The mountains here do not rise, they plunge straight into the sea. The desert does not spread out, it swallows the horizon. And in the middle of all that intensity, human beings did not merely survive, they built a civilization the world took centuries to recognize. This place does not welcome you, it tests you, with vertical cliffs, with sands that have kept silent for 1,000 years, with deep blue waters that carry no name on any map. Every bend in the road opens into an entirely different world. From dark fjords plunging more than 1,000 meters deep to cloud forests that suddenly appear in the middle of the desert to golden dunes stretching all the way to the edge of sight. This is a land where nature never, not even once, repeats itself. The driest land gives birth to streams that nourish half a continent. The smallest land once became a maritime empire that ruled an entire ocean. Here, paradox is not the exception, it is the law. And the second law is this: the people of this land are always more resilient than the ground beneath their feet. Thousands of years ago, wooden ships from this land carried fragrances to Rome, spices to China, and writing to civilizations that did not yet have names. Without this place, the trade map of the ancient world would forever be missing one of its most vital arteries. And beneath all those roots, all those forts, all those dynasties that have dissolved into wind and sand, there is something that cannot be dug up, cannot be measured, cannot be bought or sold. It can only be felt when you stand in the middle of it silent and let it touch you first. And the place to begin is where the sea and the mountains first saw each other. The place every journey through this land must pass through at least once. Across the endless golden sands and burning sunlight of the Middle East, there is a city unlike any other in the world. Muscat, the capital of Oman, is not loud and it is not flashy like some of its wealthy neighbors. It is quieter, deeper, and because of that, it is beautiful in a way you never forget. From above, Muscat appears like a fragile strip of city caught between two giant forces of nature. On one side, the rugged reddish-brown Hajar Mountains rise steeply from the earth. On the other, the turquoise waters of the Gulf of Oman stretch endlessly toward the horizon. The Omani people call the Hajar Mountains the backbone of the country. Nearly 700 kilometers long and almost 3,000 meters high. This mountain range does more than block the dry winds from the desert. It also holds the underground water that has nourished the city for thousands of years. And the coastline below, since ancient times, has been a gateway to trade routes connecting Oman with the wider world. The mountains protect, the sea connects, And between those two forces, a quiet civilization was born. But before we step into the city, let our eyes drift offshore to the small islands of the Dakhiliyah Nature Reserve. A place where a secret is kept beneath the water. A secret not everyone is lucky enough to witness. Under the crystal-clear turquoise waves, giant sea turtles move slowly and majestically like ancient submarines, drifting through a dream. Their shells shimmer as sunlight cuts through the water. Their wide, calm eyes seem to look straight into eternity. They have crossed thousands of kilometers through the Indian Ocean, and yet they always return here. Back to Dakhiliyah, the place where they were born. The place where they bury their eggs in the warm sand, then silently return to the sea, leaving the next generation in the hands of the waves and the wind. Every year, more than 250 turtles choose these beaches as their nesting ground, the highest nesting density in the entire Gulf region. This is not an accident. This is a choice shaped by millions of years of evolution. And if you are lucky, you may also see pods of spinner dolphins drawing silver arcs through the air. They spin, dive, and splash white foam into the sunlight before disappearing once again into the deep blue water. They are not performing. They are simply living. Back on shore, history begins to speak. Two reddish-brown stone forts, Al-Jalali and Al-Marani, stand on both sides of Al-Alam Palace, like two old soldiers who never abandoned their posts. The Portuguese built them in 1580 to control the Indian Ocean trade routes. But in 1650, the Omani people took them back with willpower and with blood. The cannon scars on the fortress walls were never covered, not because people forgot them, but because some memories are chosen to remain. Not far from there, the Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque appears in the sunlight like a dream carved from white stone. A massive dome, towering minarets, and inside, one of the largest prayer carpets in the world stretches 70 meters across the floor. Shashish. A gold-plated Swarovski chandelier fills the space with an almost magical glow. This is where thousands of people come every day, not only to pray, but to find themselves again in silence. And when night falls, Mutra Corniche awakens in its own way. Lights shimmer across the surface of the bay. Traditional dhow boats rest quietly on the water like pages from an ancient poem. And inside the narrow alleys of Souk, one of the oldest markets in the Arab world, the scent of frankincense and spices blends together. It pulls you deeper, slower, as if time itself breathes differently here. A hot cup of kahwa is placed into your hands. No questions, no explanation. That is Oman. Hospitality is not a rule here, it is an instinct. From the harmony between the strength of stone mountains and the sparkle of the turquoise sea, our journey is about to lead us into another world. A land where the dry desert reveals the sweet secret of the monsoon, where golden dunes transform into mysterious green carpets, and an ancient fragrance spreads across the endless sky and earth. And then, the desert reveals its secret. Just travel south, farther, deeper, and you will step into a world no one would ever imagine could exist in the dry heart of Arabia. Dhofar, a land where once every year the sky changes its mind and the desert turns into forest. The people here call it the miracle season of Allah. From June to September, the Indian Ocean monsoon rushes in, bringing thick white mist, tiny drops of drizzle, and cool air that feels like a European morning lost in the desert of the Middle East. Dry, cracked hillsides suddenly wrap themselves in a lush green coat. White waterfalls appear from cliffs that only a week earlier stood silent and bone dry. The scent of wet earth, fresh leaves, and rising mist spreads through the air like a poem nature reads aloud once every year. This is Kharif season, and it changes everything. But before Kharif arrives, Dhofar has always kept its own secrets in the darkness and fog. High in the Jabal Samhan mountains, where clouds linger all year round and cliffs rise like the walls of the world, there is a creature so rare that many people will never see it in their entire lifetime. The Arabian leopard, Qadr, as the local people call it, with a voice full of respect. A slender figure with pale golden fur covered in dense black rosette spots moves silently across the steep rocks through the mist. Its sharp golden eyes flash in the darkness for only a moment, and then it disappears into the trees and cliffs as if it had never been there at all. It is the smallest leopard subspecies in the world. Only around 50 mature individuals remain across the entire Arabian Peninsula. And Dhofar is one of the last places they still choose to call home. Not by accident, but because this is one of the only places wild enough, mysterious enough, and worthy enough for a living spirit like that. Here in Dhofar, thousands of years ago, human beings also found their own treasure, not gold and not oil. Frankincense, milky white drops of resin seeped from boswellia trees across the highlands, releasing a fragrance that traveled on the wind, drawing merchants from Egypt, Rome, India, and Mesopotamia across the sea. At Sumhuram and Al-Balid, two UNESCO sites beside peaceful lagoons, once stood some of the busiest trading ports of the ancient world. Old stone walls, weathered foundations, and leaning columns beneath the golden sun, all of them still tell the story of a golden age when Dhofar was once a center of the world. In the year 2000, UNESCO recognized this place as a World Heritage Site. But to the local people, it has never been only a ruin. It is a living memory. And when Kharif returns, that memory is awakened again by the sound of drums. The Kharif Festival, the largest festival in southern Oman, is where the Jabali and Mahri people tribes with ancient Semitic languages dating back thousands of years come together to dance, sing, and welcome the rainy season like an old friend returning after a long time away. Bright traditional clothing, the scent of frankincense in the air, joyful laughter blending with the soft drizzle falling over the green hills. Mrs. This is not just a festival. This is the way a community reminds itself that no matter how harsh the desert becomes, the green season always returns. At Wadi Darbat, white waterfalls pour from the cliffs into crystal-clear lakes, while mist embraces the mighty Jabal Samhan behind them. And along the coast of Muscat, giant limestone caves receive each roaring ocean wave, then blast white foam into the sky like nature's own fireworks. Down. Dhofar is not only beautiful, Dhofar is a place where nature is still allowed to be powerful. Leaving behind the warm breath of the monsoon and the sweet scent of frankincense lingering over the green hills, the journey suddenly carries us north. To a place where the silent desert gives way to dark stone mountains plunging straight down into the sea, carving dramatic roaring fjords like sharp blades cutting across the ocean. This is Musandam. There is nowhere else on the Arabian Peninsula that looks like this. Cliffs more than 1,000 meters high, dark, rough, almost vertical drop into the deep blue water without hesitation. Below them, long, winding fjords twist deep into the heart of the mountains, like mysterious cracks carved into the rock by nature through millions of years of tectonic force. The local people call them khors and see them as one of the most majestic gifts Allah has given to this land. A small wooden dhow boat drifts silently through the heart of the fjord. Around it, giant cliffs stand still. Above it, the sky opens wide. And in that moment, human beings understand their own smallness completely and willingly. Then, the water breaks open. Large pods of dolphins leap out of the deep blue fjords, forming glittering silver arcs, spinning through the air, then diving back down in bursts of white foam. They do not know they are making people hold their breath. They are simply living free and radiant among thousand-year-old cliffs. And if you lift your eyes higher toward the steep mountain slopes that seem almost vertical, you will see grey-brown figures standing firmly on the cliffs as if gravity does not apply to them. Arabian tar, an endemic species living at elevations of more than 2,000 meters, moves skillfully and calmly across terrain that human beings barely dare to look down from. Their hooves were made for stone. Their instinct is the mountain. One species belongs to the sea. One species belongs to the mountains, and both exist together in the same frame. From the summit of Jabal Samhan, the highest mountain in Musandam, rising more than 2,000 meters, the entire fjord system appears like a giant painting no artist could ever create. And right beneath your feet, scattered across the stone, are ancient marine fossils and prehistoric carvings. Thousands of years ago, someone stood here, looked down, and fell silent in the same way. Far below at the port of Shab, life still moves to the rhythm of the waves. Fishermen from the Shahi tribe, wearing white dishdashas, row their dhow boats into the fjords at dawn, as their fathers did and their grandfathers before them. They carry knowledge of the sea, passed down by word of mouth through each generation, without the need for a map. Shab fort watches over them from the shore, its hundreds-year-old Portuguese stone walls still standing firm beneath the harsh sun like an old man who never sleeps. Musandam is not loud. It does not need to be. It speaks through stone, through waves, through the eyes of people who have lived their entire lives between mountains and sea and have never wanted to go anywhere else. And as the towering cliffs and the sound of fjord waves still echo behind us, the road slowly begins to twist inland, opening into a quieter, more contemplative Oman. A place where high mountains gradually transform into green plateaus, peaceful oases, and ancient forts silently preserve the memories of an old kingdom. As the towering cliffs and the sound of fjord waves still echo behind us, the road slowly begins to twist deep into the interior, opening into a quieter, more contemplative Oman, a place where high mountains gradually transform into green plateaus, peaceful oases, and ancient forts silently preserve the memories of an old kingdom. This is Ad Dakhiliyah, the heart of Oman. Standing on the summit of Jabal Shams, the highest mountain in Oman, rising more than 3,000 meters, you look down and understand why people call this place the Mountain of the Sun. Right below your feet, Wadi opens like a massive wound cut through the earth. Dark red cliffs, rising almost vertically, plunging down as deep as 1,000 meters, with white clouds drifting just below eye level. This is the Grand Canyon of Oman. No noise, no signs, only stone wind and the enormous silence of time. Then turn to the other side, and Jabal Akhdar appears like a miracle, at an altitude of 2,000 meters, in a land where the desert seems to have claimed almost everything. There are blooming rose gardens, deep red, pomegranate orchards, and lush green rows of date palms. Morning mist rests gently on each petal. The air is cool like a mountain, morning in Europe. The Green Mountain, the Omani people named it perfectly, is proof that life always finds a way to survive, no matter how harsh the world becomes. And that life did not appear by accident. It was built stone by stone, meter by meter, of water channels across thousands of years. Clear water flows quietly from the foot of the mountains, slipping through underground and open channels, cooling every date palm, every garden in the peaceful oasis villages. This is Aflaj, the ancient irrigation system recognized by UNESCO in 2006, and it has been working continuously for more than 4,000 years. No pumps, no electricity, only the wisdom of the ancients and the law of gravity. Communities share the water according to fair rules, passed down from one generation to the next. No one takes more than their share. This is not just engineering. This is a philosophy of life. Not far from those water channels, enormous forts stand, watching the millennia pass without moving. Nizwa Fort, with the largest round tower in Oman, was once the political and religious center of the entire region. Thick walls, dark corridors, and sophisticated defensive traps were designed to defeat enemies step by step. And Bahla Fort and Jabreen Castle, both UNESCO World Heritage Sites, carry ancient legends and architectural beauty so powerful that people stand there and forget the passage of time. Nizwa is not only a fort, it was once the spiritual capital of Ibadi Islam, a tolerant and democratic branch of faith that shaped the soul of Oman for centuries. The call of the muezzin rises from simple mosque minarets. People kneel in quiet devotion, and life continues exactly as it has for a very long time. On the steep cliffs of Jabal Shams, the Nubian ibex stands firm with curved horns more than 1 meter long, proud, motionless like a statue carved by nature itself. Below, herds of mountain gazelles move gently across the highland grass, their golden brown coats shining in the afternoon sun. They do not know they are beautiful. And that is exactly why they are more beautiful than anything. In the ancient mud villages below, people still wear white dish dashes as they care for rose gardens, harvest ripe pomegranates, or patiently craft silver and pottery by hand, following family traditions passed down through generations. No hurry, no noise. Life here has its own rhythm of breathing, slow, deep, and full of meaning. Ad Dhahirah does not show off. It does not need to. It simply stands there with high mountains, flowing water, thousand-year-old forts, and people bound to this land like roots clinging to stone, reminding us that true civilization is not measured by the height of its buildings. It is measured by the depth of its memory. The silent mountains and ancient forts of the interior slowly begin to give way, revealing a fertile flatland where salty sea winds blow inland, carrying the breath of green orchards and the prosperous rhythm of life along the coast. The sea breeze arrives first. The scent of damp earth and fresh leaves reaches you even before the date palm gardens come into view. Batinah does not need a grand entrance. It simply opens itself wide, calm and abundant, like a host who has had the table ready for a long time. And if Ad Dakhiliyah is the heart of Oman, then this place is the pair of hands that feeds the entire country. From above, Batinah stretches out like a lush green ribbon, more than 300 kilometers long, caught between the mighty Hajar Mountains behind it and the shimmering Gulf of Oman in front. Nowhere else in Oman holds this much green. Date palm groves, mango orchards, and banana gardens continue one after another as far as the eye can see. Crystal clear wadis flow down from the high mountains, carrying silt, carrying groundwater, carrying life, quietly and generously into the plain. People call this the breadbasket of Oman. And when you stand among the towering date palms, their leaves weaving together to create cool shade, listening to the gentle sound of water flowing through the Aflaj channels below, you understand why this land has nourished people here for thousands of years. The Aflaji channels here are not the work of machines. They are the work of patience, of wisdom, of ancient people who understood that water cannot be conquered. It can only be invited, guided, and shared fairly. Thousands of years later, those channels still flow, still cool the land, still bind communities together through one simple but profound rule: no one takes more than their share. And beside those ancient channels, modern irrigation dams have risen, managing the water that comes down from the Hajar Mountains into the plains more efficiently than ever before. Old and new, stone and concrete, flowing in the same direction. But Batinah does not only look inward, it also looks out to the sea. In Sohar, the largest city in the region, there is a name that has echoed across the Arab world for more than 1,000 years. People say that from this very port, Sinbad the sailor, the legendary figure from 1001 Nights, raised his sails and rushed out into the open sea toward magical lands that could only exist in dreams. Legend or history in Sohar, the line between the two is so thin it almost disappears. Sohar Fort stands proudly by the sea, its ancient walls facing directly toward the commercial port, a place that was once one of the busiest trading centers on the maritime Silk Road. Goods from India, China, Africa, and the Mediterranean passed through here. Dhow boats loaded with spices, silk, and frankincense arrived, then departed again, carrying the story of Oman across the world. And today, the modern port of Sohar, one of the largest deep-water ports in the Gulf region, continues that same mission. Giant container ships have replaced wooden boats, but Oman's desire to connect with the world has never changed. Farther inland, at the foot of the Hajar Mountains, Nakal Fort and Rustak Fort stand with dignity, like two old soldiers who never leave their posts. Deep red clay walls, towering watchtowers, narrow corridors, and hidden angles were all carefully designed to defeat invaders step by step. They are not only forts, they are history books made of stone, telling stories of dynasties' wars and people who decided that this fertile land was worth protecting with everything they had. And daily life in Batinah continues quiet, hard-working, and full of dignity. Farmers in white dish dashas care for the date palm groves from early morning before the harsh sun arrives. Fishermen push their boats out to sea at dawn, returning with full holds of fish at sunset. Workers in modern factories do their jobs not far from the date gardens. 3 generations, 3 rhythms of life, existing together on one strip of land without contradiction. And in the peaceful countryside villages, the laughter of local festivals blends with the sweet fragrance of date palm blossoms. The tolerant, hospitable spirit of Ibadi culture still lives in every gesture, in every welcoming glance towards strangers, as if they were old friends returning after a long time away. Batinah is not glamorous. It is not dramatic like the fjords of Musandam, not mysterious like Jabal Samhan, not ancient in the same way as Nizwa. It simply is alive, full, abundant, and honest, like a meal cooked with the freshest ingredients, needing no decoration at all. And if you look down from above long enough, you will see the green of Batinah slowly begin to fade, kilometer by kilometer, until only one color remains. Gold, endless, and so silent that you can hear the wind moving the sand. Wahiba Sands, 180 kilometers of continuous sand, unbroken, uninterrupted, stretching in every direction like an ocean drained of water, leaving only giant waves frozen in the middle of their motion. Towering dunes rise and fall beneath the brilliant sunlight, casting dark shadows down their western slopes, while their eastern faces blaze white like mirrors. The wind passes through, and each tiny grain of sand moves slowly, steadily, reshaping the dunes like an artist who is never satisfied with his own work. The desert is not motionless. It simply moves at a rhythm human beings are not patient enough to notice. And then in the middle of all that dryness and silence, you see them. Arabian oryx. Their bright white coats stand out like ghosts among the golden dunes, their long, straight horns reaching toward the sky like two silver blades. They stand there completely still, gazing toward the horizon, with the calmness of creatures that learned how to live with the desert millions of years ago. Asal. This is a species that was once completely extinct in the wild, hunted down to the very last one. But Oman refused to accept that. They bred them, protected them, and released them back into the wild, and the oryx returned. Standing in the middle of Wahiba Sands, as if they had never disappeared at all. Their bright coats are not an accident. They reflect the heat of the sun, helping them keep their body temperature stable in the burning desert. Nature designed them perfectly for this place, and Oman was wise enough to recognize that before it was too late. But Sharqiyah is not only desert, it also hides other secrets deeper, greener, and far more unexpected than you might imagine. Wadi Shab, Wadi Tuwi, two names that anyone who has set foot there will never forget. Emerald blue water flows through the narrow canyon floor with steep rock walls on both sides covered in palm trees and ferns. Sunlight filters through the leaves, creating trembling golden streaks across the surface of the water. Deeper inside the canyon, natural swimming pools hide behind limestone caves where reflected light creates a mystical blue color that words can hardly describe. And if you need more proof that nature here follows no ordinary rules, Bima Sinkhole will convince you. A giant sinkhole almost perfectly circular, 50 meters deep and more than 70 meters wide, with emerald blue sea water resting silently underground like a buried jewel. No warning sign, no simple explanation, just beauty appearing exactly where you would never expect it. At the end of the peninsula, where Oman reaches closest toward the Indian Ocean, Ras Al Jinz waits for nightfall. When the moon rises, hundreds of giant sea turtles crawl onto the white sand, heavy, slow, but impossible to stop. They have migrated thousands of kilometers across the ocean to reach this place, back to the exact beach where they were born. That instinct, so precise it seems impossible to explain, is one of the greatest miracles nature still has left. Ras Al Jinz is the largest turtle nesting reserve in the world. Every year, 30 to 50,000 turtle visits are recorded on this beach. And the Omani people stand watch, not to simply watch them, but to protect them. In the city of Sur, craftsmen still sit and carve the wooden frames of dhow boats by hand. The rhythmic sound of hammers echoes from traditional shipyards that are hundreds of years old. These boats once carried Omani merchants all the way to Zanzibar, India, and China. And although the world has changed, this craft is still preserved, not because it is still profitable, but because it is memory. And when night falls over Wahiba Sands, the Bedouin sit around the fire, pouring fragrant Arabian coffee and tea, telling desert stories beneath a sky full of glittering stars without a single cloud. Here, a few hundred kilometers from Muscat, city lights cannot reach. The night sky of Wahiba Sands is one of the most beautiful star-filled skies human beings can still see with the naked eye. Hospitality is not a rule for the Bedouin. It is how they survive, by believing that a stranger in the desert always deserves to be welcomed. The Bedouin have a saying, "The desert never ends, it only changes shape." And as you sit there watching the fire slowly fade beneath the Wahiba night sky, you begin to believe it. Because beyond the final dunes, there is no border, only another version of vastness. Darker, more stone, and so quiet that even the wind seems afraid to speak. And then you understand what the Bedouin mean. The stone here is unlike any stone you have ever seen. It does not rise dramatically. It does not try to impress it. Does not stand there demanding attention. It simply lies there, stretching all the way to the horizon, dark and silent, as if it is holding a secret no one has asked the right question to unlock. There is no welcome sign, no entrance gate. Al-Wusta does not need those things, because this land does not care whether you come or not. It existed long before human beings gave it a name, and it will continue to exist long after all of us have passed through. Jidat al-Harasis, reddish-brown stone, stretches without interruption. Dry wadis twist across the land like cracks in time. And the deep blue sky presses down from above, making it feel as if the entire universe has shrunk to only this piece of earth, and you standing in the middle of it. No forest, no river, no city, only silence so thick that you begin to hear your own breathing and realize it is the only sound worthy of existing here. UNESCO calls this a biosphere reserve, not because it is beautiful in the usual way, but because it is one of the rare remaining wilderness ecosystems on Earth. A place human beings have not yet had the chance, or perhaps not yet had the courage to change. And right in the middle of that vast emptiness, something strange happens. White dots begin to appear on the horizon, small at first, then larger, then clearer, with every step closer. Arabian oryx. Their bright white coats shine like silver against the reddish-brown stone. Their long, straight horns rise toward the sky with dignity and pride, and their eyes look straight ahead with the calmness of creatures that know exactly where they belong. But it was not always this way. In the 1970s, they disappeared completely, hunted down to the last one, declared extinct in the wild like a sentence that could not be appealed. But Oman refused to accept that sentence. A national conservation program was launched, breeding them, releasing them back into the wild, guarding them day after day. And slowly, step by step, dry season after dry season, the oryx found their way back to Jiddat al-Harasis. Today, Al-Wusta is home to the largest wild oryx population in the world. This is not a miracle. This is willpower, measured in decades. Not far from the oryx, grazing on sparse desert plants, smoke from a small fire rises straight into the still air. The only sign of human presence in the vast stone desert. The Bedouins sit around it, pouring fragrant Arabian coffee and tea, speaking in warm, low voices as if they have all of eternity to say what needs to be said. Camels rest nearby, so calm they seem more like part of the landscape than living creatures. And far away on the horizon, modern oil and gas rigs glitter beneath the sun. A reminder that the 21st century still exists, even if here it looks more like an uninvited guest than the owner of the house. Tradition and modernity do not collide in Al-Wusta. They simply stand beside each other in silence, each one understanding that this land is wide enough to hold them both without compromise. Scattered across the stone desert, the ruins of small forts and ancient sites are slowly sinking into the sand. The wind wears down each stone, erasing each carved mark, little by little, and yet they remain, stubborn as old storytellers who refuse to stop speaking even when their voices have grown hoarse. They remind us that even the most desolate land was once chosen by someone as home, and was once a link in ancient trade routes connecting civilizations we now know only through books. Al-Wusta promises you nothing. No waterfalls, no glorious forts, no crowded markets. It only shows you Oman in its most original state before history began to be written down. Before human beings arrived and decided that every empty space needed to be filled. Sometimes the greatest beauty is not something that has been built, but something that has been left untouched. There are afternoons in Al-Wusta when the sunlight begins to lean low, and the shadows of the rocks stretch out like thin, bony fingers. And you look toward the northwest and realize the sky there has a different color, not blue, not gold. Something in between faint and ancient, as if the air there is still holding the breath of someone who breathed long before you were born. and then you walk toward it. The Hajar Mountains gradually lower kilometer by kilometer. Not collapsing, but like an old man sitting down after a long journey, making room for plains, for oases, for lush green date palm gardens rising in the border desert like whispers of groundwater reaching the surface. Gazelles appear here, small herds with golden brown coats gliding lightly across the sparse grass like moving patches of sunlight. Their ears raised high alert to every sound, their long, graceful legs touching the earth so gently it feels as if they are flying more than running. And on the lower rocky slopes of the western Hajar Mountain, gazelles stand proudly. Their grey-brown coats blend perfectly with the color of the stone, their slightly curved horns stretching outward like the final brushstrokes nature added to the painting before putting the brush down. They do not know they are beautiful. They are simply living free and resilient in a land human beings have been trying to understand for thousands of years and still have not fully understood. And it is here, in a land that seems like only a space in between, that history waits beneath the ground, more patient than any human being who has ever lived upon it. Bat al-Qutm, Al-Ain, three names that even many Omanis have never visited, but UNESCO has known them since 1988. Hundreds of ancient stone tombs shaped like round towers lie scattered across the red desert floor. Carefully stacked stones from 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, the Bronze Age when Oman was still a thriving civilization connected to Mesopotamia and India through trade routes that modern maps can no longer fully redraw. The desert wind has worn them down across each millennium, but more than 1,000 tombs still stand there, silent and unwavering, like gatekeepers of a vanished world that disappeared before it could leave an explanation behind. You stand among them and feel something very difficult to name. Not sadness, not fear, not even awe, but the realization that people have lived, loved, died, and been remembered on this land far longer than any story you have ever been told. And in that moment, the line between past and present becomes so thin, it almost disappears. You are no longer a traveler looking into history. You are a small part of that current standing, exactly where you are meant to stand, not far from those ancient tombs in Bahrain, where Oman and the UAE touch life moves with a different rhythm. Warmer and more lively in the way only a borderland can be. People pass through the crossing carrying good stories and family ties stretched across two countries. As if the border never truly existed in their minds. Tribal gatherings still take place in old villages, where people in traditional clothing exchange stories over cups of fragrant Arabian coffee and tea. The tolerant and hospitable spirit of Ibadi culture still lives in every gesture, even here, where two nations and two rhythms of life exist side by side. Ibri Fort and Baremi Fort watch over it all. Their ancient walls are not out of place beside modern urban neighborhoods, green farms beside straight roads leading out toward the wider world. As if time here does not move in one direction, but twists into itself, the old feeding the new, and the new remembering the old with every breath. And then the journey stops here, not because Oman has run out of stories to tell, but because some stories can only be understood when you come yourself. When you stand alone in the desert at sunset, when you breathe the scent of frankincense in the wind, when you look into the eyes of an oryx in Jiddat al-Harasis, and realize that some things are too vast for any language to hold. From Muscat to Dhofar, from the fjords of Musandam to the stone tombs of Bat Oman is not a destination, it is a question. And the farther you travel, the more you want to keep asking. And perhaps that is the real reason to return. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to subscribe and click on the video on your screen to continue with the next journey YouTube thinks you'll love.